Hi, everyone. It is Olivia and Viv back for another talk show podcast episode where we're going to be discussing our major project updates. Hi, Viv.
Hello, people. Thank you so much for joining back in. Last time we briefly went into kind of like what our project is about, the general themes of it. And today we wanted to talk about a piece that our major project is inspired or is based on.
So, Viv and I previously created a piece called Home Run Cafe that was an immersive Hooters experience. For those of you who don't know what Hooters is, it's an American sports bar that heavily runs off of the sexualization of its female workers. Essentially, this is just a known fact. It is not a theory that waitresses are hired specifically for their natural assets and
physical assets.
They're natural physical assets. And it's essentially a sports bar American restaurant that is centered on the idea of male gaze and female sexualization and objectification. So we created an immersive experience of that where Viv and I played waitresses at a Hooters style sports bar in a 2 to 4 immersive interactive piece where we would have up to 4 audience members or restaurant goers at a time who were given a menu for our home run cafe, we called it, where they could make orders. Although, Viv, would you like to explain the nature of those orders?
I would love to. So the orders will technically, I believe that we had on your knees, open up, switch clothing, what else? We had slap, we had yes, we had the Home Run Cafe special as well, which was very, very exciting.
All inspired by each of the 7 deadly sins, of course.
Exactly. And
for example, we have for gluttony, for example, our corresponding order was open up, in which we would open our mouths and allow audience members to spray whipped cream inside of our mouths.
Exactly. And generally the entire piece also functioned in sevens, so that was the theme running through it. There's interesting, I think it was very interesting juxtaposition that we built, that technically it was about discovery at the beginning of the piece for the audience members. So you got to order something for your table, but instead of ordering the whatever you ordered, for example, open up for the table, you realized that you ordered us to do something for you. So it was a wordplay with the word ordering, because you get to order people.
Completely. And with that, working with the idea of consent on both ends, for both performers and Viv, and for the audience members. So consent is in we're workers, we're being paid to do a job. We don't really have the choice to say no. We're going to do whatever the audience members ask for. And some even ask for crazy combinations of different things on the menu. And we have to comply from the beginning. And you have to wonder, is it really consenting if you can't revoke your consent at any moment? And that was an idea that we were playing with. And then for the audience members, it was, can they really consent to what's going on if they don't know what they've asked for? We purposefully kept the orders, the listings on the menus very vague. So for example, open up. What does that mean? You don't necessarily know that means we're going to hand you whipped cream and open our mouths so you can spray us with cream. So it's, can they really consent to what's happening if they don't know what it is that they're asking for from the start?
Exactly. And there was also this idea of going beyond the waitress persona, of there was this pre-established consent of the performers, that we're like, okay, this is something that we're okay with doing, and it's okay if they order us to do any of these, and we're happy to follow through it. So there was this idea of pre-established consent that is also portrayed as a sense of consent, because you financially benefit from someone doing something to you, but also then the constant one sense of consent that Liv was talking about, kind of like, can you consent to something if you don't know the full story, which is something that I believe in psychology, that Liv is more educated on than I am, you call informed consent.
Yeah, completely. And we're taking all of those ideas now from Home Run Cafe and we're pulling them into this new piece for our major project, which is still going to be inspired by that very masculine, male centric sports bar setting, not necessarily a Hooters this time, but we're taking that sports bar in the US, it would be more of a sports bar setting. In the UK, it would be more of a pub setting. And we're taking that feeling and creating another immersive experience that's going to be an installation of a sports bar with different interactive elements where audience members can sit at their booths. We're talking about the idea of potentially incorporating a menu again for some sort of ordering, but also we'll be able to interact with a video element where we're currently about to start the process of interviewing women and female presenting individuals to learn about their stories with this sort of matter. Whereas last time we were specifically focusing on female objectification and sexualization and the idea of consent. This time we're moving on and we're asking the question, what is it like to be a female presenting person experiencing male gaze, both externally and internally? What is it like to experience internalized male gaze and how does that affect you? And what is it like to be out in the world experiencing male gaze in real time? And we're taking all of those ideas and creating this interactive experience. Viv, would you like to talk more about it?
Yes, so I was very, very excited when we actually talked to Rachel, our supervisor for this project. And hello, Rachel. um, this particular subject matter. And it's very, very interesting to kind of like also find, it's really interesting to find these sorts of things in the everyday life. For example, just going to the movies and seeing a post-apocalyptic survival movie with potentially there is a male protagonist who is like this very much of a kind of like cis male power insert, like superhero insert of a powerful male who survives certain types of instances, and then the female lead or the romantic interest is this petite, very, very beautiful, very, very waxed female. I would also like to say caricature at this point, because that is not the representation that you should have in the year 2022. So it's
That
coming from a place of
caricature is actually like a fantastic way to describe it because a caricature by nature is an exaggeration. And that's completely what this idealistic woman in media is now. It's an exaggeration. It's complete hyperbole of what a woman is. This perfectly waxed, perfectly obedient and subservient, kind and nurturing to the extent of not caring for herself kind of person who revolves around men and lives to serve men. It's a complete exaggeration of female traits that not every woman even has.
Exactly, and I feel like it's completely is out of touch with reality, to be honest. Like every single woman has body hair, every single woman experiences bodily functions such as periods that no one is talking about, for example, in these settings, which is just wild. But yes, so it's kind of like last time we talked about the research questions, and I feel like we have kind of derailed from the idea of everyday feminism and going to the idea of what it is like to exist in a world that is ready to tell your story on your behalf. When
Yeah, how does male gaze, both internalized and externalized, impact female presenting people on a daily basis? And it can be in big ways or small ways in your everyday life. Like, and there are things that we just don't even notice so much anymore. Like, for example, I was in New York City yesterday going to meet up with a friend and I was waiting for her in the park and a man like following me saying, "You cute, you cute," right? And at the point, it's like you just ignore it and brush it off because it's so normal, but it's not normal. And that's what we're trying to
mm,
highlight.
mm,
We're giving female presenting people a chance to tell their stories. Um, and when we start these interviews, that's going to be the entire point is we want to hear what female presenting people honestly have to say about their experience with male gaze and just highlight that it's not normal. Well, it is, it's common, but it's not normal and it shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't exist that way. We want to
exactly.
give people a chance to talk about that.
Exactly, and that's also why we feel like it's very, very important for us to be a full female team working on this, because we are the ones collaborating with the interviewees in the situation to well, you'll find later where the collaboration comes into play, but we provide facilitate actually a platform where they are able to provide their personal experiences, their personal point of view in this subject matter. And it comes from a place of, I understand you and I'm here for you as a peer, as someone who has this similar sort of lived experience, even if it's not the exact same one, it is still of a place of understanding that I know exactly what it's like to not feel safe in an environment where you got hurt.
Yep. And with that, I think it's important that you point out, Viv, that everybody's experience is different and that they're not going to be the same. And we expect that when we interview people. And it's something that we definitely have to make clear in the interviews, is that when we're asking questions, we're not looking for a particular answer. We just want to know what these people honestly have to say. We're not, just encouraging everybody to tell us their sob stories. It's just, we're working with the question of, what is it like being a female presenting person experiencing male gaze in different ways, and how does it impact you, and what has been your experience with it, both specific and general. And we're really just looking for everybody's unique experience, because we're starting with a question, and that's what it is. It's a question. We don't have the answer yet. So 70%, something like that, just spitballing, of the purpose of these interviews is going to be to gain material for our project, which will actually be displayed during in the installation. But at least 30% of it is for research purposes as well, as we're really learning, what do these people have to say? What is it like to be a female presenting person experiencing male gaze today? And how can we incorporate the things that these people say into the installation? Which is why in the near future, we'll give an update of what we're thinking, the layout of our space is going to be for the installation. But it's going to be constantly evolving slightly as we learn new information from these people and figure out how we want to incorporate it and how we can showcase their experience and highlight their voices and what they have to say.
Exactly. And this is one of the main reasons also why we want to do qualitative research, primary qualitative research as a part of our project, is to have actual female presenting people from our lives to be a part of this experience and be a part of this actual project. And it's part of the praxis as well. It's constantly evolving alongside the project, and it has already done this. It informs the narrative, it informs the specific questions that we're asking, because we talked about the research questions have already been established, and kind of like how we want to approach this and everything. And in the process of doing that, the point of view and the questions shifted, like we mentioned earlier. So it's constantly affecting how this piece is coming together, which is important in the sense of when we're building the praxis for this particular moment and this particular show as well. So that's going to be very, very interesting. I feel like how Home Run Cafe, the piece that we worked on earlier, that we talked about earlier in this episode as well, how that was kind of like a scratch on something that we wanted to talk about more. And it was kind of like, there's so much to talk about and I don't even know where to begin, but this is a good start. So I feel like we came from a place of, there's so much to say and not enough time to do it. So yeah.
Completely. And because of that, because there's so much to say, one of our earliest challenges, which we're just now solving and working through, is narrowing it down because there is so much to say about the female experience. And we had to realize this cannot be a piece about the female experience because that is just too broad. Even for one woman or one female presenting person, the experience has too much involved. So we had to decide, what is it that we want to say? And that's how we narrowed it down to male gaze. And we just want to know how female presenting people experience male gaze, how both externalized and how we internalize it and how that affects us and our actions. Yeah.
I briefly actually want to touch on a subject that we off camera constantly circle back to, that is going to be also very prominent in the actual piece, is
I'm
the
curious now. What is it?
whore Madonna divide. That is going to
Mm.
be very much present in the way that we will be present in the physical space. So kind of like the idea of someone nurturing and someone who's a maternal figure, and then there's the idea of the sex object, the femme fatale, the person who is the object of lust, and someone who's able to offer that sort of a thing. And that's kind of like the divide and the roles, and the male gaze is like of someone who is a sexual object or someone who's a nurturing mother figure.
It's such an interesting thing too, because I mean, the whore and the Madonna figures are both caricatures themselves. First, we'll get that out of
Again,
the way.
again.
Also, it's a way to pit women against each other. It's to say which one is right. You can be this one or this one. One's right, one's wrong, and it puts women in competition. And it's just a competition created by male gaze, which is
Mm.
something important to talk about. So we are currently trying to figure out, how do we want to incorporate the concept of the whore and the Madonna. And another thing just came to mind while you were speaking, Viv, that I think is very interesting, is that the whore and the Madonna are really the same person. They're different sides of the same person.
Mm.
And it's crazy that women are taught, one is perfect and the other one is completely wrong or sinful or boring, or, whatever it is. When they're really just two sides, like I think everybody's got a little bit of a whore and a little bit of a Madonna, probably. And, it's so interesting, especially nowadays, where there's such a conversation going on in, the aftermath of the decision on Roe v. Wade in the US. There's been a lot of conversation lately about, sex just for pleasure versus sex for procreation, and saying, what are women and people who are able to become pregnant now only expected to have sex if they want to have a baby, whereas men don't have to carry that burden. And people who impregnate other people and can't get pregnant don't have to carry that burden. And it really is a whore Madonna kind of complex, is when you just want to have sex for fun, you're a whore, versus when you're pregnant, you're a Madonna. And it's just like two different sides of the same person, just forced to be a caricature in different ways. And neither of those sides really represent an entire person. And it's just a
Exactly.
conversation that's happening nowadays.
Yeah, I feel like there's also this idea of reducing, especially in, I feel like there's this entire conversation about having female protagonists in media, and whether or not that is relatable for male audiences, because I've related to male characters growing up my entire life, and it's like this entirely weird thing, but also it's this
Well,
idea of
because a man is neutral and a woman is something else. A man is just a person, a woman is a female person. So it's harder for men to relate to women because of that than it is for women to relate to men. Plus, as women, we are raised to be nurturing and understanding and to be able to empathize and relate to other people. Whereas, and I'm not trying to make a generalization, but it's present in society, is that women are really taught to be nurturing, whereas in most cases, men aren't encouraged to be as nurturing and as selfless as women are.
it's also the way that we're socialized to take part, for example, in unpaid labor, such as taking care of the home, and kind of like, for example, the way that we've been socialized to. I noticed this, that I do it at least, when you're, for example, attending a dinner party at someone else's place, and then you see that there's someone, usually the mother or the sister, just starting to clean up the table, or anyone
Can I
else who's
help?
been,
How
yeah,
can I
yes,
help?
how can
Yeah,
I help? Like, do you need help?
I
Do you
did
want me to
that
do anything?
yesterday.
It's it just makes me feel
Yeah,
like, it makes me feel guilty for just sitting down and not doing anything, when you can clearly tell that someone else is doing all the labor in order to facilitate,
absolutely.
or in order to um offer something big for someone else. And that makes me feel really, really bad and really, really weird about just
Yeah.
sitting down. But yeah, so it's the way that but also you were talking about the female characters. I feel like the way that they are also written are very, very poor in the way that they're usually one-sided, and there's not much. There's You can like tell like three words
They
to
do
define
not
that
pass the
character.
Bechdel test.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the things, like, and then at times I like catch myself watching a movie and I'm like, I know nothing about this female character and I know so much about this male character, because you can tell that the writers actually created a proper backstory for the male character, and the
And the
female
woman
characters just to facilitate a sexual, or kind of like breed into like, yeah, so
is a
just to feed into the
manifestation,
ego.
because the female character is going to be a manifestation of the man's desires, of the male character's
Exactly.
desires.
Or
He's a
yeah.
manifestation of his male gaze. You know, just a little side note on that. I yesterday went and saw a Broadway show, not to brag, and it was Funny Girl. I saw Funny Girl for the first time and got to see Beanie Feldstein, saw Ramin Karimloo, who I love, Jane Lynch, fantastic, and I enjoyed it. But I really, it being a classical, old style Broadway show, I felt like it was really hard for me to relate to it because I felt like the female character, the lead, Fanny Bryce, is really just focusing her entire life's goals around being pretty and being desirable, and this one man who she thinks is so out of her league that she would do anything to keep him. And I feel like while she is the lead, I could relate to her in so many ways, but she didn't seem like, a leading lady to me that I felt like I could relate to, because she seemed like the manifestation of a male's desires, which, funny enough, there's an entire song about that is, what is it? You are the reflection of my love's affection,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
just how a female character is completely a manifestation of a male character's desires. And I think this brings us back around a bit more to the objective of our piece, because now it's really important to have these conversations
Yeah.
about the female experience, but just bringing it back to our piece is
Yes.
specifically about male gaze and what is it like to experience male gaze as not just a woman, but a female presenting person.
And it's kind of like the idea of the way that specifically the internalized male gaze, that is the modern version of it, of literally you living in a world, even if you're alone, you are aware of how you look to someone outside. That is the
Mhm.
internalized version of kind of like, how do you exist in a world where you constantly see yourself from the outside in. And there was that
Mhm.
is a problematic thing to begin with, but the fact that there's also the idea, the feeding into all these makeup and trends and whatever is in and what is desirable, and that is dictated by the male gaze, and that is dictated by the male interest in women and what sort of interest they have in, and kind of like that is very much something that also men in power financially benefit from, and that there is multi-billion dollar industries around these things. And the idea that, I mean, yes, you men get, and male or masculine presenting people also get a lot of pressure to look a certain way.
Mhm.
However, that is a set of features that is set by men. So that is their own doing. Whereas in the thing that women deal with is not set by them, which is why we have this idea of a lot of people have been talking about the female gaze recently, and kind of like, for example, Harry Styles being of the female gaze, or written by women, as people talk about it nowadays.
I don't know
Um,
what you're talking about. No idea.
but yeah, so kind of like I feel like there's this counter argument currently going on, like what do women actually want, and what
Mhm.
is something that is actually catered to the male gaze, even if it's manifested within the male form.
Yeah. Hmm. Completely. And yeah, I guess as we're wrapping up this episode of our talk show now, Is there anything else that you'd like to say, Viv? Oh, I guess I have one thing, if I could
Yes,
say, an
please.
objective going forward, because now we're kind of at the point of what are our next steps? We're working towards starting our interviews now. We've, figured out what we want our questions to be. We have our objective. We've, already tested on each other how our interviews are going to be run, and we've made sure that that's all going to go smoothly, and we are so excited to start interviewing people. But something else that I want to focus on going forward, just another goal. Viv, you mentioned before how important it is for us to be an all-female team working on this. It's a piece about an aspect of the feminine experience that is created by women. And it's finally like women getting a chance to tell our own stories and to shift the narrative, and to explain it ourselves. Which I think is really important. So going forward, we've had a little bit of difficulty already trying to find fantastic resources, written material that are written by women on the subjects that we're looking at. And we know there have to be so many great ones out there. So that's just one of our objectives going forward, is that we can definitely use men's research and we can use men's papers to inspire us, but it's also important that we're looking at women's work too, and reading what women have to say as we move forward.
Exactly.
So that's just something on my part. Do you have anything else, Viv, for our objectives moving forward?
Oh, I feel like there was so much that we covered today.
Yeah, we could have said it all already. That might be the end.
Oh, yeah, it's just, and it's kind of like, again, I feel like this is just scratching the surface, just mentioning something and be like, I could have a whole entire episode on this alone. And kind of like, for example, the manifestation of the male gaze, both in women and men, or like the feminine and masculine presenting people. And that alone is 3 episodes. And it's like, there's so much to dig deeper into, and the fact that it's just kind of like, oh, this is something, it just feels like yeah, and for me it solidifies how important it is to talk about living in a world where your narrative is not your narrative.
Yeah, completely. And I guess just a final point to add on to that is that something that we're really focusing on in the interviews is finally giving female presenting people a chance to narrate it themselves.
Exactly.
To talk about what their experience is like. And again, we're not looking for any particular answers in the interview. It's a research question. What is it like to be a female presenting person experiencing male gaze? And it's just that, it is a question. And we are going to be exploring that. We're not looking for a particular answer. We just want to figure out what people's actual experiences are like. And we want to highlight their voices, both by presenting the interview footage in the space, and by letting it influence the space, and our actions and our presentation in other ways is going to be really important.
Exactly. I'm sure we will be unpacking more of these ideas as we get more into the processes of what we're doing. So yeah, please.
It's been fantastic chatting with y'all again today. We're back for another episode very soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We will keep you soon posted on the social media as soon as we get to that hill. And thank you so much for joining us. We truly do appreciate just having these talks. I feel like we're both very passionate about these subjects, if you can tell.
You kind of just don't know what you're talking about.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Bye.